What you see before you is one of the rarest amps on planet Earth. Shrouded in mystery, so much so it's literally known as the mystery amp, for those that know. And most people don't know. You have to be a serious Vox JMI nerd to have any idea what you're looking at right now. It's totally fine. This video is going to be documenting one of the rarest pieces in the JMI history books. Something, again, very few people are aware of, but I think it's incredibly special, and I'm honored to be the one that gets to document this in extreme detail for you all in this video. So taking a look at the outside, probably can't tell what it is. It's just a big square. Just a big square, unmistakably Vox with the diamond grill cloth, obviously the logo as well. Now the grill cloth looks brown, but it actually is black cloth that is faded to this brown color, which is kind of cool. Take a look at the cabinet dimensions. It's large, it's tall, it's wide, it's just a big square. It's very odd looking. So let's go ahead and flip it around and get a closer look at what this thing actually is. From the back, we are greeted by the beautiful, beautiful JMI copper faceplate. There's nothing like it. I absolutely love them. And this one is very clean. A little dusty, but otherwise looks very clean. And maybe you recognize it now, maybe not. This is a Vox AC10 SRT in a 112 combo. Now, that is so rare, this may be a one of one. This might be the only one on planet Earth. It's absolutely insane. The AC10 SRT, if you're not aware of that model, is extremely rare. And to have one in a copper panel is rarer still. And to have one in a combo is basically, like I said, it's known as the mystery amp because this was never listed in any of the Vox catalogs or anything. But there are a few of these out there, and this is the only one I'm aware of that is a 112 combo. So immediately you're greeted by, obviously, the copper panel, open back cabinet. But look at this cutout here. It looks factory original. What is it? Well, this cabinet is actually for a different model known as the LW30, the lightweight 30. It was a solid state Vox AC30 type amplifier, and actually it was a 310 combo. So this cabinet originally would have had 310s in that model. This one is a 112. Again, we'll get more into the history in a little bit. Just take a closer look though. That classic kind of rougher texture Tolex. Classic screws there. Just absolutely beautiful. So, again, we'll get into the history of this amplifier. My buddy just picked this up, and I'm really honored that he trusted me to not only document it, but to repair it, because this thing is not healthy, unfortunately, but that's no big deal. We will get it fixed up, and then we will hopefully be able to demo it with some really cool guitars at the end of the video. And once we're all done, I would like to do a big Vox JMI roundup with some incredible rare pieces that we have between friends. So stay tuned, subscribe for that. Welcome to the ETC Guitar YouTube channel, where we do crazy things like repair all these vintage amps and document them in extreme detail. So if you're a nerd into the vintage stuff, you're going to enjoy this channel, hopefully. So let's go ahead and take the panel off and get a closer look at it. Got the back panel off, but before we go any further, I thought it would be a good idea to bring in my own personal JMI AC10 SRT for some additional historical context and kind of lay the foundation, set the stage, so to speak, for this amplifier. So this is known as a Domino Super Reverb. It is the exact same chassis as the AC10 SRT that is Vox labeled. They're both a JMI product, you'll see there, and then hopefully you can see on mine right there. It says the same. They're identical. The Domino variant is just that chassis in this kind of funky head cabinet. Now, Domino was a sub-brand of Vox, and basically this was the top-of-the-line model they offered for just part of 1964. They were always a copper panel like this. They never did it with a gray panel, and it only existed for part of 64, so it's very rare. You know, I have this amp and this amp together is remarkable. It is insane to have these together. These are extremely, extremely rare pieces of JMI history. So the more common, if you can even call it that, more recognizable version of the AC10 SRT would be the trapezoid head version that you see on the Doug and Pat show, for example. Most of those are a gray panel instead of copper panel, and those are made from 64 into 65 plus. So it stands to reason there's probably more of those than there are the Domino variant, and but we have no idea how many in total. Very, very few. What they never offered officially in the catalog for Domino, Vox, anything, was a combo version of the AC10 SRT circuit. That never existed. So what is this? What are we looking at here? So I already mentioned that the cabinet is from the LW30, and I'll just quickly show the back panel. So this is where the tremolo controls would have been on the LW30. And then when I flip it over, one sec. So on this side, you can see it's literally just some nails holding this metal grate. And these holes were added later. We know that by photos of the history of this amplifier to do an impedance selector and a speaker out. So why in the world did Vox not just make a new back panel for this thing that didn't have the cutout in it? Well, that gets into the mystery side of this thing. There are two kind of prevailing thoughts as to the history of these mystery amps, and there are a few different variants out there. This was the only one of its kind that I'm aware of that is a 112 setup. But to get more into that, let's kind of situate the cabinet a little bit better so you guys got more light. Actually, real quick, before we do that, I just want to show the AC10 SRT chassis in all of the head variants, the trapezoid head and the Domino version. They are mounted from screws on the top here. So that's how the chassis is held in place. On this is a slider board. We'll get into that more, but let's go ahead and reorient everything. Pulling the chassis out of this amplifier is a bit interesting. You can see, first and foremost, the quote-unquote slider board is not a slider board at all. The chassis, you can see right there, is blocked by the cabinet, so you have to actually pull it down. It's literally secured by just some screws into this wood block here going into the cabinet there. And then also interesting on this, an AC30 and AC15, they've got that kind of L-shaped chassis, that two-part chassis, and the tubes are facing the opposite direction. They're not hanging down, they're pointed up. So you have to have this big cutout for the, again, quote-unquote slider board, and to fit everything through, which makes it really weak. And we can see that this was added for additional reinforcement after the fact, because it's understandably so very wobbly. It's not very thick. And so I've got all the screws out, literally just a couple screws on the top and bottom. You can see a hole there, little focus, and a hole here. And those are just screwing into this here. So yeah, I was expecting it to be a slider, and it's not. So let's go ahead and pull it out. So with the chassis out, we can take a little bit of a closer look at the cabinet. And once again, you can see the mounting points are pretty crazy, pretty crude. Just some screws going into this little side brace for the cabinet. This amp cabinet also has a bit of a bizarre baffle. So we can see down here the cutouts for the two ELAC speakers that would have been original to the LW30. Those are 10-inch speakers, just like you find in the JMI AC10 Twin. So there would be one there, and then similar to a Bandmaster, you'd have one up here, or the Bandmaster might be the opposite. I can't remember. But either way, three 10-inch speakers, so similar config. But then we can see it's got these two square holes that are plugged up. And who knows what those are for? Tweeters, something, not really sure. Again, this is the only example that has ever surfaced to my knowledge that is a 112 baffle. Is the baffle original? I don't know. What I do know is it's got original grill cloth on it, so it could have been transported over. Who knows? That's kind of where we get into a little bit more of the mystery side. There's a lot of question marks with this amp, but regardless, it's incredibly cool. Now, once again, the blue in the speaker is a modern reissue. It did have a vintage 64 or so blue, which was destroyed in shipping, unfortunately. So we'll go ahead and move on from the cabinet now, but really an interesting piece. So let's take a look at the chassis, which is even more interesting. Okay, another AC10 SRT on the workbench. Pretty insane, and but not as insane actually as this freaking Slider board, again, in quotation marks, does not slide at all. Very surprised by that still. So first and foremost, you can see just how fragile it is. There's not a whole lot of wood. The chassis is really light, so that does help. But this cutout right here is, I'm assuming, for the ELAC that would be mounted just kind of right in this area, just to give it a little bit more space in the original LW30 style baffle. And this cutout, I don't know what that's for. It's got kind of this weird honeycomb shape going for it. And again, the owner added an additional brace here to give it some more rigidity because even though it's a light chassis, it needs some support. And the configuration is very simple on these, but it is unique. You got 4 preamp tubes for one channel, which is, there's nothing else like that in the JMI lineup. It's what gives it a lot of extra gain and a lot of character. You got 2 EL84s, and then you've got an EZ81 rectifier. We can see the output transformer is original. Looks just like the one on mine. You get your taps right on the top, which is kind of unique. Filter cap, and then obviously the power transformer has been replaced. I don't know the reason or history of that, but we will find out in due time. So let's go ahead and, we do have the original foot switch, or at least what I'm assuming is the original foot switch, which is pretty cool. That would be for the tremolo. Let's go ahead and flip it over, see what we got. How am I going to do this? This is going to be a tricky amp to work on. I can already tell. Now that it's all situated here with the slider board, it's actually kind of convenient having it versus just the chassis on its own. We can take a closer look at everything. So I think what I'm going to do is in the edit, I'm just going to go ahead and zoom in and give you some close-ups of all of the insides for the people that care about that sort of stuff. And then while they're doing that, I'm going to talk about the kind of 2 prevailing theories behind this mystery amp. So first and foremost, this is not an amp that was ever in a catalog from Vox. So it never showed up as an official model anywhere, not for Vox, not for Domino. And that kind of lends to the question of, well, what is it? What did it come from? There are 2 kind of main theories to it. The first being that this is essentially a prototype. This is an R&D build from JMI. They had this new model, the AC10 SRT. It's a brand new circuit in 1964. They've got it in the trapezoid head. They've got it in the domino head. So what about a combo, right? They've got the AC10 Twin at the same time, which is a completely different circuit. And that one, there was a head version as well as a combo, 210 combo version. So stands to reason you wouldn't want to have the AC10 SRT, which would be an upgrade from that AC10 Twin model. You won't want to have that also in a 210 combo. It'd be too confusing. So what do? You look at what you got already. And in this case, they had the LW30 Vox model, which was already existing. It was a 3x10 combo. Let's throw the chassis in there. And so that's kind of the prevailing theory from that side of things. Basically, they're testing things out, trying to figure it out. You see most of the mystery amps are a 310 configuration. And there's only this one that I've ever seen that's a 112. So again, stands to reason, playing around, experimenting, seeing what makes sense and what doesn't. And they never actually landed on it being a final model in the range. So this is all you got. That's one. The second theory is actually this was, and there is actually some information to back up this a little bit, that this was essentially a pieced together amplifier from parts. So JMI sold a bunch of leftover stock, just a bunch of old parts that were not used. So they had chassis, they had cabinets of various models, etc. And then the entity that purchased all of the parts created this amplifier. So they pieced together the cabinet, they pieced together the chassis, they did the modifications to get it all to fit together. Perhaps they didn't have the SRT trapezoid head or the domino head, but they just had the chassis by itself. And then they had the LW30 cabinets. Hey, I know, we can piece them together and create something that we can sell as a complete package. So that's kind of the thought there, is that this is a bunch of original JMI parts that were pieced together outside of the JMI factory, outside of employees of JMI Vox, and it's just kind of its own unique thing. Now, for me personally, I don't care. Either way, it's an incredibly cool story. It's all original vintage JMI parts. It doesn't really matter, whether it's an R&D prototype or something that was pieced together by somebody else. Again, it's really cool, and the chassis alone is uber rare. So, again, I keep saying this because I want to get that very clear. This is like unobtainium, so it doesn't matter what package it's in. And you know, the history of that package, it's incredibly rare and special on its own. So anyways, those are the two kind of prevailing theories, so to speak, for why or how this amplifier came about. And that's why it's known as the mystery amp. So, okay, with that out of the way, we can take a little bit of a closer look at the chassis and some of the things I notice, and then we'll have to talk about next steps. So, first and foremost, we see a mixture of replaced parts. We've got some metal oxide resistors, don't love that in a vintage amp, and then some carbon comp resistors that are replaced, and then you know, and then some original carbon comp resistors. So it's kind of a mixed bag, so to speak. We've got replaced electrolytics all over, except for here. This is an original triple 16 microfarad can cap, and one section is bypassed, and they got a new replacement cap right here. And then two other sections are still being used in circuit. So if one section failed, I don't know why you wouldn't replace the whole thing, because it stands to reason the other two sections are probably not far behind it, and all the other electrolytics have been replaced. So we're definitely going to want to replace this whole can cap with 3 new individual capacitors. Everything else looks okay. A lot of original coupling caps, which is great. First glance, the circuit looks basically original. I'll have to compare it to mine to confirm fully, but it looks very good. It is interesting way over here. I'm not sure if you can see that or not. The board is kind of a ramp going up like that because of the screw right here that the chassis is mounted, or how the chassis is mounted to the slider board. That screw is hitting this board, and it's actually a miracle this thing didn't break. I'd be very afraid actually to remove that, because I feel like this would probably break. On my own personal SRT, this part of the board is actually like cut out, which is kind of interesting. Other things like, you know, the spring tank here, I don't know if this is original or not. Does not look like mine. The mounting points are different. One kind of helpful piece with this era JMI Vox, they have all of this red paint on all of the original solder joints. Every original solder joint had red paint, so it's very easy to see what has been touched up later on. You know, obviously replaced components are easy to tell, but sometimes vintage components can be thrown in, and that's an easy way to tell. So all of these connections on the reverb have been replaced, and the tank itself, I say tank, the spring itself looks different. Moving on, original pots, original wiring. It doesn't have a high and low input. It's got the stock kind of, both are the same identical inputs. Cathode bias resistor change, cathode bypass cap here is also obviously changed. We'll have to see how that bias is. Unfortunately, moving our way over here to the power transformer, we already know it's a replaced power transformer, is what it is. On something this rare, it doesn't really matter that much. And again, I've said this so many times, the power transformer does not matter. 300 volts is 300 volts. It doesn't matter if it came from a transformer made in 1964 or one made in 2026. 300 volts is 300 volts. So as long as it's putting out the right power, it doesn't matter. Fortunately, we look at this transformer, we can see 290 volts here for the secondaries. That seems pretty close to what the factory spec would be, so that's good. But we can see right here 230 to 240 volt. So yeah, that means that this is made for the UK power. This amp has a US plug on the end of it. So there's the US plug. And I think the owner of this amp, the new owner, did this himself. I'm not sure fully, but either way, I don't have a step-up transformer to be able to get that 230, 240 volts. So when we played the amplifier, we plugged it into the wall, and you know, it had the front tap here connected to 115. The front, there you can see in the corner, but there's nothing connected to it on this side. See that? So the transformer doesn't have different voltage taps available. It's just 240 volts or nothing, basically. So the owner, I talked to him, he has a step-up transformer. That doesn't bother him at all. I don't have a step-up transformer, so we've got one coming my way so that I can continue to work on and diagnose this amp and make sure the voltages are correct, but we need to wait for that to come in before we can go much further. So with that, we got to pause, and then we'll pick this up once we are able to actually give it the proper voltage it needs. Back here with the AC10 SRT, we've got a step-up transformer. Hopefully you can see that. So we can go ahead and test it properly and see what's going on with the correct voltage running into it. So let's go get this thing set up, get some new measurements, and see where we're at. I can't remember where we left off. It's been a few days. We got a step-up transformer. The owner of this amp sent me one. It arrived damaged. He sent me another one. It just arrived, and I confirmed it is outputting 240 volts. So we can now check the voltages and see where we're at. So first and foremost, we can check the heater supply and make sure that we are seeing 6.3 as we should. And I have the voltage, high voltage disconnected. 6.5, so that's fine. This connection is normally there. It's disconnected because I wanted to make sure we had the correct heater voltage before going any further. So go ahead and turn it off. And we can re-hook that up and check the rest of the voltages in the amp and see where we're at. With the blue wire hooked back up, we'll now have DC flowing through the amplifier so we can check the voltages and check the bias and see how long it takes to warm up and all of that fun stuff. So actually, I think what I'll do is I'll connect to the plate over here. And we'll just measure plate to cathode to start off. See what that gives us. We can kind of get a better idea of the slow warm-up we had before versus what it is doing now. So go ahead and start it. Warming up infinitely faster. All right, she's already on. So we'll let it settle a little bit. Seems like it's running pretty hot. 330 volts. For reference, I don't think mine was anywhere near that hot. Mine has an original power transformer. This obviously is a replacement. But hotter is not necessarily a bad thing. So I tested all the voltages in the amplifier. I notated them. I'm going to pull mine out again and test it because I don't remember those numbers before, where the amp was and the condition of it at the time when I measured those. So we'll just open that up and remeasure, and then I'll have a direct side-by-side of an original power transformer with the new caps in mine versus this, which is kind of a hodgepodge of new and old and a replaced power transformer. So we'll have that for reference. I just hooked it up to a scope and a load here to see what would happen with the signal and to see kind of what power it was putting out. Sounds very loud. The idle noises, it's quite noisy through a cabinet. So definitely sounds like it's making some power, and the voltages tell us it should be making a good bit of power. And hooked up to the scope, the waveform looks terrible. It looks super jacked up. So I think there's some things unhappy with this amplifier. We'll have to dive in a little bit deeper to sort out. So more to come. Not a whole lot to show you guys at this point, but for you, it will be a second. For me, probably a couple days. So let's move on. Here we have my own personal Domino JMI AC10 SRT, and we're going to be using this as our reference point with the other amplifier. So as you can see with mine, it's had some work done. I've documented it all on the channel. All of the carbon comp resistors were replaced with 1 watt carbon film. Most of that work was done before I got the amplifier, and I just kind of completed the job. We can see it's got fresh mod capacitors in it for amplified parts. Good stuff. Changed the bias resistor to 120 ohm. And yeah, overall very clean inside though. Original transformers, crucially. And there's a couple interesting differences I see looking at this versus the other amplifier here. The main one, and I'm going to take the voltages right now. I'm going to do a fresh kind of review of the voltages in this amp for our reference point. But the biggest change right here is this red wire is the center tap of the output transformer. So this black wire and this black wire, those are the two secondaries. The red is the center tap. Now let's follow where the center tap is connected. It's connected to pin 9 of the EL84, which is a screen. And so we follow the yellow wire to the screen over here. So the two screens are jumpered, obviously. No screen resistor in this. And it goes to this filter cap node right here. Now let's see where that filter cap node comes from. So we follow the yellow wire there. It's underneath all this. It goes here. And then what's there? We've got the 1K dropping resistor, which goes to the first filter cap node directly off the rectifier. So the B plus coming off the rectifier, it drops through this resistor here, and then it gets to the output transformer center tap. That's crucial for a couple of reasons. One, the schematic itself shows, and this is original and correct to this amplifier. I've seen photos of other original ones. This is the correct setup. This is factory right here. This is how they all were from the factory. If you look at the schematic, there is a difference there. I'll show you that real quick. Pull it up right here. So this is the best schematic, the only schematic online that is remotely accurate to this amp model. There's a few ones out there floating around that are very inaccurate in different ways. This is the best one. So here it is. Now, if I zoom in here, this is the crucial area. We'll notice we have the output transformer center tap right there. Follow this wire down where my finger is, and it jumps over here, and look where it's connected. It's connected directly off the B+, directly off the EZ81 rectifier in the schematic. So that's how the other amplifier is wired. This is incorrect. The correct way to have it is right here. I guess I can show in this version. Is right here. So again, the center tap from the output transformer going down here, and instead of going all the way over here, it's connected right here. So directly where the filter cap and the 1K meet, that is the correct location. So what this means is that the center tap has much lower voltage, right? It's after the 1K dropping resistor. So in that amplifier, part of the high voltage is going to be from that wire being in the wrong location. This is correct. The schematic is wrong. This is the closest schematic available. Again, multiple examples of real amps, verified original amps where this is how they're wired. And you can tell that mine is original there as well. So anyways, that's just an interesting little learning. After having them side by side, I realized that. So let's go ahead and check the voltages, and then we'll kind of go through what the results are. All right, here are the final numbers. So let's run through them real quick. The most noticeable thing, the power transformer, the original one is outputting a lot more voltage, 376 versus 347 on the replacement. But then you'll see there's a huge drop off after the 1K. We already talked about the output transformer center tap being connected differently. But yeah, after the 1K, it's a massive, 96 volts? Yeah, 96 volt drop there. So that's going to be a huge change. We can see the voltage just falls off a cliff, essentially. This is outputting like, I think definitely needs to be a 10 watt resistor. I think I measured it was like 8.9 watts or something across if I do the math. So yeah, massive drop after this resistor, and that just brings everything down on the amplifier. And so we can see the screens end up at 280, the plate ends up at 274. Usually you'd see the plate in the screens a little bit of the opposite, where you have the plate a little bit higher than the screens. This does not have screen resistors, so that's part of it there. And then you can see the differences on the other amp. Across the cathode resistors, it's got 120 ohm that I put in, measured 128, and then the replacement, the other amp is a 140. And the final bias numbers, this amp biased at 80% plate dissipation, and then the other amp biased at 101. So the other amp, by the book, is biased better, but the question remains, is this correct, right? So is this massive drop in these voltages typical for this amp, or are they not? That's the hard part about something this rare. There's not a lot of references. As far as I know, nobody has posted any voltages from their AC10 SRT before. I'm the only one, so there's not a ton of reference here. I do know of 2 more of these amplifiers, so I'm going to try and bug those owners to see if they'll send me some voltages, in which case I'll keep you guys apprised in this video what they land. But for now, we're going to use this as our rubric. This is, known good, correctly wired amplifier here. So we'll kind of use this again as a reference point for the other amp. Just for fun, I thought it would be kind of cool to put both of the chassis side by side. I apologize for the gnarly reflection. It's a metal chassis with a big old light above it, so it's going to happen. I want to make sure it's bright enough so you can see the detail. And yeah, just again, how often are you going to be able to have 2 AC10 SRT chassis side by side? You can take a look at them, screenshot it, zoom in, do whatever you want to do. It's really great to be able to have an example that has a lot of original resistors in it, so I can confirm that all of my swaps were correct and there's no differences there. Everything is the same across the board. The layout of a couple parts is slightly different, but it's very, very similar. Nothing that would change performance in any way. And then mine, I've already mentioned, has the artificial center tap. And then it has this 1 meg on the grid of the reverb recovery stage here, V3. And so I'm not exactly sure why they did that. That is how it came to me. So previous tech did that, and I guess to just stabilize the grid. I'm not really sure. Obviously, it's not present here on the original amplifier. So maybe we'll tack that in on this one and just see if it makes a difference or not, if it's worth keeping. Other than that, pretty straightforward. So we'll have to tackle the various things we need to fix in this amp, but it's really, really neat to have two of these side by side, especially with so many original parts between them. And yeah, just, man, love these amps so much, and I'm so excited to hear this one in all its glory once we're all done with it. Finally, time to get working on this amplifier. So off camera, I've been comparing it to my own example, as well as a layout drawing that a gentleman made using mine as an example, just to make sure I fully understand what has been changed and altered. And overall, this thing is pretty straight. It's just a few things and not a ton of replaced parts that aren't very obvious when you look at it, but the values are all correct, which is good news. So we'll go ahead and just start with the bypass caps here, get those out of the way, and then work our way down further on, replace this as well. I haven't exactly decided how I want to do that, but we'll get there. And then also making sure the correct wire placement for this connection right here for the center tap, so on and so forth. So let's just go ahead and dive in. Giving you guys a little bit of a status update now that I've made some progress. So replaced all the cathode bypass caps here, as well as the bias capacitor there. And I removed the capacitor, where is it, over here? This guy, which was actually pretty low rated, 350 volt. I just realized that. I don't know the voltage in that node right there, but still that seems very, very low. Should be much higher, like a 500 volt, which is what we'll be installing there. But anyways, I digress. I removed the original can cap, and basically I just wanted to show a couple quick little things. First and foremost, just the resistor value. So these are your droppers. So on the two different nodes. So there's three different caps here in that can cap. One of them was replaced with a cap that was discretely added here. There's a 10K dropper over here. And then there is a 22K and another 10K. So let's just see what they measure. So this should be 10K. Let's see what it gives us. 14K. Very high. Let's see, this is 22K. This should give us close to 22K, 43K. So those are both toast. Let's see this 10K down here, what this measures. It's hard to get measurements on the, because they've got this red paint on them. Come on. So that one's fine. So that's about just under 12K. So yeah, both of those need to be replaced. And it makes me think about some of the other resistors. For example, we got another 22K here. 27K. That's fine. You know, these are droppers. So these are affecting voltages in the amp in a pretty big way. And I want to raise the wattage too. These are just little half watts. I think we'll throw in the Vishay 2-watt power metal films in these locations to be just a little bit extra stable. See if there's anything else I need to double check there. Would be this guy right here, 47K. And that measures 92K. What the heck? Something I'm missing there? Show that if you can see it. This is 100K. That measures bang on. 92K. Goodness gracious. I mean, all the resistors in this thing, it is a hodgepodge. So let's see what the phase inverter coupling or phase inverter resistors measure. That's fine. These are 220Ks. I'm okay with those measuring a little high. You want them closer matched than that, but it's not the end of the world. About this 1 meg. That's fine. Sorry, I don't even know if you can see what I'm doing here. It's got a replaced 100K. It's fine. So we've got this 47K that is measuring 90K. We've got this 470K, which is measuring 520K. We've got this 100K. It's measuring 130K. And then we've got a weird reading on a 220K. That's kind of hard to reach with the multimeter. That's giving me 1.3 meg. So those are the immediate problems. Then this measured fine, I'm pretty sure 130. Yep, 130. And then we've got these grid stoppers. This is a new one that was installed. Should be 5.7, 4.7K. It's measuring 5.2. And this one is measuring 5.2. So those are both exactly the same. That's fine. So we got this resistor, this resistor, this resistor, this resistor, this resistor, this resistor that all appear to need to be replaced. And yeah, okay, let's get to it. And just for final confirmation, you can see the 220K red, red, yellow measuring 1.4 meg. So yeah, she's a goner. I think that's is that a plate resistor? Pin 1, yeah, that's a plate resistor. So that's gonna throw some stuff off. Alrighty, let's get that swapped. So I've got the board more or less done at this point. The 220K replaced, or rather the 1.3 meg, which is crazy. And then I did end up replacing this 100K right here, but I kept the 470 and the 47K here. They are out of tolerance by a decent amount, but not as egregious. So I decided to leave those for now. And then we can always circle back to them. We'll keep an eye on those two in particular. And then I'm not sure if you guys saw this or not, but I installed the 10K, the other dropper. I guess you guys can just barely see it there here, so that all of the droppers we have there are the 2-watt Vishay power metal films. I've got these just kind of stuck out of the way, and they'll be run over here to connect to the caps. So next step, next order of business, I think what we'll do is just try and remove this connection here. Hopefully this shrink wrap comes off okay, and then we'll reinstall the center tap to its proper location, which is at the screens. And then we can work on cleaning this up and installing the filter caps right here. We'll do the 220s, just kind of stacked right there. And that should be good for tonight. But we'll see. We'll see how motivated I am to do a lot more work. So first things first, I think I'll just go ahead and remove this portion here. I'm sure I said this already, but the hard part about working on these is actually specifically the insulation that they used. It's so fragile that any heat at all, it just melts and gets kind of ugly looking really quick. So it's really just not made to be retouched, you know, after the manufacturer does it the first time. Doing some little side quests right now in between the bigger work. That involves cleaning up the ground connection. So I'm going to lift this connection here off the chassis, lift the screw out, and then clean the underside. I'm going to add a solder washer to this one right here. That'll be the ground for the filter caps, unless I want to run them over there. I haven't decided yet. And then for the bias over here, you can see just how black it is. So a little bit of isopropyl. It's going to clean that right up, get all that grime off. And then we'll do it top and bottom, and also clean all of the, wow, look at that, immediately. And then clean the screws as well as the chassis down here, just so we have really nice connections. Now, this is by no means an optimized grounding scheme in this amplifier, but I'm not going to reinvent the wheel on it and try and completely redesign how all the grounds are done in this. It'll be fine. This is it's a vintage amp, a vintage Vox for that matter. They tend to be a little bit noisy. It is what it is. If you want perfection, I think you should get a modern amp that has ironed out all of the issues you get with some of these vintage amps. If you don't mind the quirks, then you own a vintage amp. That's kind of how it tends to work. So I'm just going to get all this stuff clean. You can see how nasty that was. Can the camera pick it up? Yeah. See how much cleaner that is already. So we just want to make sure we have a really good ground connection for this so that everything is best prepared for doing its job.